Awesome. Okay. Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining HearMe Presents. We're talking burnout. Important conversation, not gonna lie, kind of feeling it myself. So I'm looking here to get a little something. Super excited to have Victoria here to take us through this. Also, if you have any questions that pop up, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat. I will make sure I circle back to all those things. As you know, this is recorded, so we can watch it later along with the presentation materials once this is all said and done. So with that being said, Victoria, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, pin you, and let you do your thing.
Thank you. Hi, guys. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Victoria. I'm an MSW intern here at HearMe, so I am in school while doing the internship here. So yeah, let's jump into it and start with talking about burnout. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go over kind of what is burnout, because there's kind of, you know, different definitions that are floating around about what burnout is, what it consists of. And then we're gonna talk about what are some signs of burnout, the difference between burnout and stress/depression, who's at risk, and kind of some tips to kind of deal with burnout, okay? So first, when it gets started, if you guys want to just hop on, or if you want to put in the chat, like, what do you guys, when you think of burnout, what is the definition that kind of comes to your mind? Exhausted. Somebody said exhausted in the chat. Okay. What else? Not wanting to do more. That's a good one too. Tired and irritated from work, no energy, lack of motivation. Yep. Anything else? Doing the most on all cylinders. Yes, definitely can feel like that. Okay, so according to the definition from the APA, burnout is described as a physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, and negative attitudes towards oneself and others. So when applied to your work/job, it involves inability, motivation to complete job tasks, and overall dislike of your job and feeling exhausted. So while this definition definitely centers around your job, you can feel burnout in other areas as well. So like I said, I'm an intern, I'm going to school right now. That comes with a lot of stress and a lot of tasks. I can also be burned out from attending school. If you're a caregiver, whether that be a caregiver to children or anybody disabled, you can feel burned out from being a caregiver as well. So just keep that in mind when we're going through this. I will reference, you know, your job or work a lot, but it also applies to other areas. So what causes burnout? So one of the key factors is having a high stress job. What is a high stress job? Any job, whatever it is that you do, there's going to be some amount of stress, but there are certain jobs, obviously, that have higher levels than others. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, that they increase the risk of you suffering from burnout. Another cause is your increased workload. You are taking on a lot of work. Maybe you guys are short-staffed and now you have to cover somebody else's caseload, or it's just a busy season. So, you know, the restaurant or wherever you're working is seeing more customer, more service. So you're just incredibly busy. Limited flexibility. This is seen where you're not able to take time off. You know, you may put in a request way in advance to take time off, and it's denied. Or, you know, we had a lot during COVID, a lot of people were working from home. And now there's been some issues with recalling people back into the office because people really don't want to start making that commute again or being in the office on a daily basis. Another cause, underpayment. You know, especially here in the state of California, it's extremely expensive to live here. And while we do have a higher minimum wage, it's not enough to cover, you know, living expenses. So just think about how somebody would feel where they feel like they're putting in a lot of work, but they're really not seeing that return in what they're paid. Another cause is conflict with your coworkers, not getting along with the people that you have to rely on to get your job done can cause a lot of issues. And then also the inability to promote. So maybe you've been at this job for 10 years, you've been doing everything right. You think that, you know, you're the next one up to get that promotion, and then you get passed over for that. That can lead to burnout because you're going to have to adjust to not getting in that position. And again, like I said, while this does focus on work, you can also feel these things in other areas, such as like if you are a caregiver, you might be caring for a loved one, and you're not getting paid for that. You're doing that because that is your relative. And you don't have the ability to one day say, I'm not going to take care of them, right? Limited your flexibility. And you may not be able to see a time when that is going to come to an end. So you're thinking that you're going to have, it seems like you're going to have to take care of them for a long, long time. So those are some of the things that can lead to burnout. So what are some of the symptoms or signs of burnout? So the most common symptom is feeling exhausted, right? Not necessarily tired because you're getting the sleep. It's just that you are exhausted. You have no motivation. Another one is detachment or lack of interest in your job. So you're getting to work and you're really not interested in doing anything that needs to be done. And then also having negative thoughts about your job. Now, we all have those days at work where it's a busy day, we have a lot of things going on, and we get home and we're completely drained, right? But burnout is something different. This is something that's happening on a daily basis for you. Every time you go to work, you are feeling these symptoms. It is not just one day. In addition, these are things that are not going to just happen overnight, right? It's going to start off on little things. Maybe you used to always be 15 minutes early to work, and now you're only coming to work at 8 o'clock, and as soon as 5 o'clock hits, you're out the door. Maybe you used to help train new employees, and now you're not doing any of that. So these things, these little things, even though it may not seem like it, could be signs somebody is suffering from burnout. Now, of course, there are going to be physical symptoms as well, which comes along anytime you are feeling stressed. We all know stress has a negative impact on our body if we're stressed for a long period of time. So when it comes to burnout, some of these symptoms include high blood pressure, a weak immune system. So if you feel like you're constantly getting sick all the time, whereas you never were sick before, that could be a sign that you are suffering from burnout. Sleep issues, not getting enough sleep or sleeping too much, stomach problems, when you're eating, you have upset stomach regardless of what you eat, and then as well as headaches. Now let's talk about burnout versus depression, because they are very similar in the signs and the symptoms. However, there is a difference. As you can see, the DSM-5 criteria for depression, the main thing here is that it applies to their whole day, every day for a long period of time, okay? Burnout is only specific to one aspect of somebody's life. So I know when we're in chats, we get a lot of people saying, oh, I'm depressed or I'm anxious. And while they may, say, oh, it's because I'm tired all the time, we need to ask a little bit more questions and further investigate what they mean by depression. What is it really surrounding? Because they may not have depression so much as burnout or vice versa. And they may not even be aware of that. So it's just something to look out for when we are speaking with chatters and they're coming to us with depression. And then when we're talking to them in the conversation, if they are working or if they are a student going to school or if they're a caregiver, kind of delve in more and get more information to see what it is that they're actually really dealing with. But with anything, if you suffer from burnout, if you're dealing with burnout for a long period of time, it can lead to you developing depression. who's at risk? So like I said before, every job has some level of stress, but there are some jobs that are more stressful than others. So, you know, I have an astronaut that could be super stressful. The president, I feel like you can physically see the stress because they tend to age a lot in the time that they are in office. Teachers, doctors, therapists. Oh, who's that cool law enforcement officer there? Oh, that's me. Law enforcement also, we have a very high risk of burnout. So I want to hear from you guys. What profession do you think has the highest rate of burnout? Anybody in the chat? And it doesn't have to be any of these pictures. It could be anything you could come up with. Nurses, teachers, first responders, medical professionals. Anything else?
I can't find the chat on my phone, so I'm just gonna say it. They say social workers do.
Social workers, that's a good one. Medical, mental health, yep. So this is a chart of employees with the highest burnout rate. This is from 2019 though, so take that into consideration because this is before COVID. Up at the top, you see hotel, food services and hospitality, manufacturing, and then we have medical and healthcare. The third category, which if you're in the mental health space, you can fall into this category as well. So this is something to be aware of if you are considering going into the field, or if you are in the field, that the mental health space, medical space does have a high rate of employee burnout. Now, this is from 2022, and this was a small poll, so it wasn't extensive, but the question was asked is, how often at your job do you feel you are burned out? The people that reported the highest percentage are educators, with no surprise with what happened during COVID, where there was a complete shift in how teaching was done. But if you look down, you will see that almost every single profession listed on here, the percentages are very close. So what this tells us is that burnout is something that is quite common across all fields. So no matter what job somebody may have, they are susceptible to suffering from burnout. So just be aware of that it is something that is very common and something that we, should look out for. And also, if you see the signs, symptoms, or if you are experiencing yourself, know that it's not something that's uncommon and there are ways to get help for it. So this is another graph, and this is generationally. So sometimes it may feel as though there is kind of a misunderstanding between your boss maybe and their employees of companies, because they are in two different generational groups, and they may not experience burnout in the same way. Now, if you look at Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X, they have high rates of experiencing burnout. However, when we look at baby boomers, it's a lot lower than the other groups. Again, I just want to point this out because they may not understand burnout or how somebody gets to that point or what's causing somebody to not necessarily do their job as they were doing it before. So it may take some explaining to them a little bit more about what burnout is and what's going on. So just know that there is kind of a generational difference there. So when we're talking about COVID-19, I think that it really put a spotlight on social services in general, right? We had a lot of people that were depending on benefits because they were out of work. The the medical field was heavily impacted. And then because of the isolation, the change to our everyday life, there was an increased demand of mental health workers. So 67% of all workers believe burnout has worsened over the course of the pandemic. And according to the APA, the amount of referrals psychologists have received have doubled since 2020. This has led to an increase not only in the workload, but of wait lists. So in the mental health space, you know, the amount of people that are seeking help has dramatically increased. And as being somebody or a professional in the space, this increase in workload, it makes you at higher risk of burnout, because not only do you have a higher workload, you also have that knowledge that there are so many people that need your help that you're not able to get to. So just be aware of that and take note of any signs or symptoms you may yourself be experiencing of burnout in this field. So I want to bring up some topics that have been floating around recently. The Great Resignation, quiet quitting. These are talked about in a negative aspect, in a negative way. However, when we look at this graph here, the top reasons why people left their job, a lot of these things are contributors to burnout. So when we look at people leaving their job, they're not just leaving because they had a whim or they just were tired of it. It was likely because they were suffering from burnout and they did not realize it. So what we see here as one of the major reasons, of course, was the pay was too low, no opportunities for advancement, feeling disrespected at work, the limited flexibility. These are all things we talked about as contributing to burnout. So when we've seen this shift of people leaving or no longer in the workforce, it is not necessarily because people don't want to work. It is because they have burned out and they're not able to, or they need to take that time away in order to reassess, refocus, and then get back into the field. So how do we deal with burnout? So because it is tied a lot to our job, because most of us spend a majority of our day at work, there are some things that we can do at work. So one of them is obviously talking to your employer to see what changes can be made. Also talking to your coworkers, because there is power in numbers, right? We see a lot of workers that have unions, when their needs are not met, they go on strike, right? And that usually causes some type of change. So when you are starting to feel burnout, talking to somebody else and sharing that with them can really help, especially if they're feeling that same way too. Another thing you can do is like take time off. A lot of us, including myself, are very hesitant to take time off because we feel like, you know, oh no, we're letting the team down or whatever the case may be. But when you consistently have that built into your work life, where, you know, you always take a week off during summer or you take 2 weeks off during Christmas, and that is expected, then that helps alleviate the risk of burnout. When it comes to like taking breaks, I am guilty of this. I don't take lunch at work. I just work through because we have so much going on. However, taking even a short 15-20 minute break in between your day can really break up that time and give you a chance to kind of breathe and reset. Also set clear boundaries at work. Again, I'll use myself as an example. I have a work phone and they call me 24/7, and I have a really hard time not checking my phone or seeing what's going on because I feel like I always need to know what's coming. However, in order to, you know, lower my risk of burning out, I have to put that phone away. I have to turn that phone off. Also, when you get to work, there's things you can do, such as if you're easily distracted, you know, maybe moving your work area to some place where you have quiet and you can focus on your work. Getting to work, making a list of the tasks of things that you need to get done. And that way you're checking things off one at a time. Even if you only do that one thing, you still completed that task. So while you may not have a control of some aspects at your work, such as how much you're getting paid or the hours that you're working, there are certain things you do have control of that can help you with dealing with burnout. Now, another big factor is always going to be self-care. And I know we hear this time and time again, but it is so important. I listed 2 here, exercise and time with friends or family, which are my 2 favorite self-care, but it doesn't even have to be something that big. So it could be something as simple as when you get home from work, you take a 20-minute break where you just kind of sit down, you're not looking at your phone, you're kind of just relaxing. And that way you're really breaking up the time from going from work to home, and you're not feeling like you're rushing into the next thing. It also could be something as simple as getting 8 hours of sleep each night. It doesn't have to be something where you have develop a whole routine, because if you are dealing with burnout, that could feel very overwhelming. So you want to pick one small thing that you can turn into a habit. And then once you get that going, you can add on, make it for a longer duration of time, or do different things. But we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, because again, when you're dealing with burnout, you're already feeling that level of exhaustion. So you don't want to do anything that's going to be too difficult. So this chart here, this is actually a study was done by Health and Human Services, the United States government. The Surgeon General put together this report about workplace mental health and well-being. It is obviously becomes so important that the government itself took a look at this to see what was going on. And they broke it down into these different components. The first one being protection from harm. So prioritizing your workplace physical and psychological safety. I think they made a really good job of adding in the psychological factor, because sometimes that is what is leading to the burnout. It's not necessarily the physical aspect of your work, but it's the mental exhaustion that you can get. Enabling adequate rest and normalizing support for mental health. Some of us may not feel comfortable with disclosing that we're struggling with these issues when it comes to work. So having an environment or a work environment where that is something that is supported, and I know that's become more common now in different workplaces where they support you taking mental health days, or have services that you can refer you to a mental health specialist so you can get the help. Another component is connection and community. Obviously, having a support system is always going to help. So having people that you feel included with, that you can relate to, that you can turn to, that give you ideas, suggestions, that's also going to help. Work-life harmony, which is kind of difficult because, again, sometimes we ourselves don't know how to draw that line between work and our personal life. One of the really good suggestions that I think here is like provide more autonomy over how work is done. And what that means is basically, allowing people to work from home, allowing people to have flexible schedules, allowing them to decide how they are going to do their work so they feel like they have a sense of control in the matter. The next component is mattering at work. So feeling like you actually are serving a purpose or doing something that is beneficial when you are at work. There are several different industries or careers, such as being a lawyer, where they get paid pretty decently if they work in the private sector. However, if you're constantly representing defendants that are losing their cases or getting sent to jail or whatever the case may be, that can be very disheartening, and that can also cause burnout. So doing something where you feel like you serve a purpose can also aid in lowering your risk of burnout. And then the opportunity for growth. So, being able to learn more, do different tasks, even if it's not necessarily promoting, but maybe transferring to a different department or having a different role within that company, that can also help with lowering the risk of burnout in companies. So if you guys would just take a moment, and this is always something good to do at any time, but just think of one thing, one self-care activity that you think you can commit to doing at least once a week, because we want to keep it very simple, very easy, nothing too overwhelming for us, especially, like I said, if we are in this burnout phase where we are just exhausted from everything. So what are some self-care things that you think that you would be able to do that you can commit to for doing? Nature walks, that's a good one. Anything else? Watch a movie, that's good too. Take breaks from homework. Yes, taking breaks is really important. And sometimes like it's very helpful to even set a timer on your phone for, 40 minutes. And then at that point, you take a little 10-minute break and then you go back to doing whatever work you have, or in this case, homework. A pint of Ben and Jerry's. I love that one too. 100% take a lunch break. Yes, like I said, I'm guilty of that, not taking a lunch break, taking real days off. Yes, BJ, I agree. Yes, actually unplugging, not even thinking about work and being off for the day. And again, that doesn't mean you're doing anything at all. You could literally just be having a normal day, but you're not engaging or thinking about or even having anything to do with your work or your job or school or whatever the case may be. All right, those are all really good suggestions. Turn off notifications. That's a really good one. I also forget to do that as well. So that's also a good thing to do when we're taking time off. All right, so this is just a quick recap of everything we discussed. It's very quick, but I think it drives home the point of burnout symptoms and how to deal with them.
Hey, Victoria, I actually think you need to share your audio if the video is talking. So you might need to reshare, but then in the share settings, you also have to share sound. It's usually on the bottom left.
Okay, hold on. Oh, okay, I see.
Remix.
That's my dog Bandit. He also helps me with when I'm feeling burned out as well. So if you have pets, that's another thing. All right, let's get back to it. Oh, sorry. Technical difficulties. All right, let's try this again.
Welcome back to the Demystifying Medicine channel. Today's video is on burnout, symptoms, and strategies.
Okay.
Meet Jane. Jane has been working extra hours at work lately and is starting to feel overwhelmed and defeated. No matter how hard she tries, she just can't seem to catch up. Does not feel like she's getting any recognition or help from her boss. Jane is feeling extreme stress, exhaustion, and is developing a negative attitude towards her work. Jane is experiencing burnout. Burnout is a psychological syndrome resulting from prolonged chronic job stress. However, it's important to note that burnout is not only applicable to professionals in the workplace. Students with heavy workload can also develop burnout syndrome. Now let's discuss the symptoms of burnout. The three key symptoms of burnout are exhaustion, cynicism and detachment, and lack of accomplishment. Here's where you should ask yourself some questions. Are you so tired that you can't do anything after work? Do you drag yourself out of bed to get to work or class in the morning? If you feel yourself answering yes to these questions, you may be feeling exhausted both emotionally and physically. Some physical symptoms to look out for that can indicate exhaustion include body aches, difficulty concentrating, feeling drained, and irritability. Extreme exhaustion often leads to our second key symptom, cynicism and detachment. A question to ask yourself is whether you've developed a negative outlook on work or school. Signs of cynicism and detachment can include a negative attitude, a loss of enjoyment in your work, isolation from colleagues and fellow students, feeling disconnected from others and your environment, and increased conflict with others. The third key symptom is lack of accomplishment. Do you feel like you can never catch up on your to-do list? If so, you may be demonstrating signs of feeling like your work is not important. You may see a loss in productivity, you may feel useless or ineffective, and show poor performance. Some other symptoms of burnout syndrome include difficulty controlling emotions, not taking care of oneself, not eating properly, and experiencing headaches or blurry vision. It is important to find ways to prevent or cope with burnout, as studies suggest that if these symptoms are left untreated, they can increase your risk of obesity and cardiovascular disease. If you're relating to these symptoms, it's important to know you're not alone. In fact, burnout may be more common than you think. What do you think is the prevalence of burnout syndrome in high-stress sectors? A, 10 to 15%, B, 20 to 25%, or C, 45 to 50%? If you answered C, you're correct. Studies suggest prevalence among high-stress sectors such as healthcare to be as high as 46%. Now let's discuss coping and preventative strategies. The first strategy involves changing your work patterns. Recent studies have suggested that a main cause of burnout and stress is due to long hours of work. Take Jane, for example. Working extra hours at her job has caused her much stress. If Jane changed her work pattern by working less hours, taking more breaks, avoiding overtime, and investing more of her time into her personal life, she may find her job significantly less stressful and could avoid potential burnout. However, sometimes you can't afford to adjust your work pattern, which is okay, as there are many other ways to help reduce burnout stress. Another strategy is creating social circles. Social support is one of the most important coping strategies for burnout. Communicating with your colleagues, family, and friends can help them understand what you're going through. Together, you can make a plan to help gain back control of your work-life balance. Another common coping strategy is focusing on yourself and developing relaxation strategies. This can include learning new breathing exercises, trying out yoga or meditation, or discovering a love for music and art therapy. Lastly, it's important to prioritize health and fitness. Getting exercise and following a healthy diet is crucial for maintaining your overall health. Although physical fitness is extremely important for your well-being, prioritizing your mental health is just as important. Working on your mental health may include making more time for your personal life, or finding a new hobby that brings you joy. Additionally, it's recommended that adults get at least 7 hours of sleep each night to prevent exhaustion and maintain proper energy and focus for the day. Now let's get back to Jane. What do you think she should do to manage her burnout? Should she A, quit her job, B, communicate her feelings with her manager and family to develop a plan to reduce her stress, or C, work harder and hope for a promotion? If you chose B, that's a great option. Jane decides to have a discussion with her boss, and they are able to establish a plan that takes more work stress off Jane and allows her to regain her enjoyment of coming to work. We hope through this video you were able to develop some new strategies to deal with burnout. However, please don't hesitate to reach out to other professional services. For example, many employers have free confidential counseling services available. Feel free to reach out to your HR department to find out what your company has in place. Additionally, the Canadian Mental Health Association, or the CMHA, offers free programs to help cope with mental health issues and help you return to your job with confidence. Lastly, if you're a student, check out your campus's Student Wellness Center to access some other professional resources. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos.
Okay, so that was really great. In Jane's case, her employee was able to work with her to, work on that stress and the workload. That may not always be an option. So the other suggestions the video gives are also really good ways in order to help with burnout.
Welcome back to the Domestic.
So lastly, I want to leave some resources that deal specifically with burnout that you can use not only for yourself, but also for chatters. Both of these websites have worksheets, videos, and different tasks and activities to help address burnout. It also gives more information about what causes burnout and signs and symptoms that suggest that you are suffering from burnout. Again, both sites, the information is free. And like I said, they have different various forms of that information. So even if, when we're dealing with a chatter, we can reference the worksheet and ask them the questions that are on the worksheet and kind of work through it with them. Or like I said, we can utilize them for ourselves. So if you guys want to take like a screen grab or a picture of these two websites, they are very helpful. And that is the end of the presentation. So if you guys have any questions.
Wow, I feel like this is one of the first times where it was pretty clear and straightforward, and I don't see any questions in the chat or have come through. But thank you for this information. These websites in this presentation will be made available after. But yeah, I think the recommendation potentially to go through some of these resources with someone we're chatting with might be helpful. I think the only question I might actually have is, have you ever experienced or, I don't know, maybe like within chat or even professionally, any like resistance when, when, go ahead.
I could tell, like, a lot of my coworkers, I see this quite often because a lot of my coworkers have been in this field, law enforcement, for 20 plus years. And so at times they don't see it necessarily as anything is wrong. They just see it as a normal part of, developing in your career, where you kind of become a little bit jaded or a little bit more cynical about things. So trying to get them to see it differently or see it as something that they can possibly work through and that they don't necessarily have to feel that way, it's kind of a challenge at times. Yes.
Have you ever, been in discussion or working with someone both, professionally within the Leo space or, in the HearMe space, where once you've kind of broken through that small barrier, can you speak to any potential like success or small movements forward that have helped someone kind of unpack or define like burnout, or, kind of take those micro steps to kind of improve, or heard like positive results, as a result of that conversation?
Yeah, so the first website that's listed here, they actually have a worksheet that really helps kind of work through burnout. And it kind of basically, like I said, like, pick one activity for yourself, whatever the case may be. And then it kind of asks, after doing that activity, how do you feel now? What changes have you seen? So somebody can actually visually see that instead of just, maybe writing it down or whatnot. Because I think sometimes people, it's kind of an afterthought, or maybe they don't think it will have much of an improvement. So it's always helpful to like actually, revisit that and kind of give them a little homework assignment and say, okay, try doing this for 3 days this week, and then we'll come back and see how it's made you feel. And most of the time they are going to, at least the chatters that I've had, say that it did help them at least take their mind off of their work or take out their mind off the stress that they were feeling. So it's just, and then it's another way to help them stay consistent with it as well.
Cool. I just also want to say I dropped those links if you weren't able to copy them down or waiting on the presentation to be received and want to look at them quicker. I put them in the chat, so feel free to copy both of those. I really appreciate, as Brendea said, the reminder, because I think I'm approaching that. And this is really beautifully well done. So if no one else has any questions, we can go ahead and end it here. You have 20 minutes back to your night to self-care, move on to other things, but I'm really grateful. This was wonderful, Victoria. Thank you so much. And everyone have a great night.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys attending.